Leopold had a lovely, extravagant royal wedding, as you would expect for a prince of England. He didn't wait around, and he jumped right into matrimony with Helena, marrying her on April 27th, 1882. He was 29 years old, and she was 8 years his junior at just 21. Please continue to support my channel by subscribing. The wedding was a royal fairy tale. Helena's train was a full 6 yards long and embroidered in silver. The service was performed by the Archbishop of Canterbury. As a nervous groom, and as one who was not used to the giant public displays of affection and publicity, Helena was clear and confident with her vows, but this cannot be said for Leopold. He mumbled his way through the service with not so distinctly audible answers. Unlike many of the arranged marriages of the past, especially in the royal family, Leopold did well to find true love with Helena. It has been reported that their marriage was blissful, with the married pair complementing each other well. Leopold was just happy to have gained his independence from his mother finally. They went on to produce children, and only a year later, his wife gave birth to his first child, Princess Alice, in 1883. Leopold was living with a curse, and he would pass his disease on to his daughter. As a female, she would not see the impact of haemophilia, but she would go on to become a royal carrier. Determined to grow their family, only a year later, the pair would go on to become pregnant again in 1884. They were in the prime of their lives. They were enjoying family time together with their daughter and their baby on the way. They envisioned a long, bright future together, raising little royals for Grandma Victoria. But unfortunately, Leopold's body had a different plan in store for him when it began to fail him. Leopold was approaching 30, but his royal blood disease was beginning to cause him joint pains during the cold and wintry English winters. His doctors urged him to seek better climates abroad away from his pregnant wife in Cannes, but this would be his ultimate undoing. Leopold was part of a large brood, and he particularly was close to Princess Louise, who was Queen Victoria's 6th child and only 5 years older than Leopold. Louise was the rebel of the family, and when Leopold was still a child, she set him a particularly bad example when he was caught up in one of her scandals. It is rumoured that Princess Louise began an affair with Leopold's tutor, Walter Sterling, before falling in love and creating a secret love child that would be brought up by a non-royal family, but this was never proven. Leopold was only 14 years old at the time, but he already knew which side he was on. Leopold did not portray a rebellious boy, but he was a geeky guy with a cheeky side. When Queen Victoria dismissed Walter Sterling from royal service, Leopold still kept up a secret correspondence with the man. Despite living a marriage of bliss, it has been alleged that Leopold may have been set to marry another woman called Alice Liddell. She was the real-life inspiration for Alice's adventures in Wonderland, with some even suggesting that he named his daughter Alice after her. But others allege that he was not in love with Alice, but instead he was in love with her younger sister Edith, who was closer to his age. Alice served as a secret smokescreen for Leopold's undying devotion to Edith. If he was so in love with Edith, why did he not go on to marry her? The answer is a heartbreaking one. In 1876, when Leopold was failing in his quest for a bride, the young little girl died from measles or periodontonitis, which is inflammation of the abdomen. Leopold played his part in her funeral with a touching display of affection when he helped carry her coffin into the funeral procession. Queen Victoria lived in fear that her precious boy would be suddenly taken from her, and so she was overbearing and protected of him and his health. But as the years went on, she enjoyed the control she had over him and the fact that he relied on her so heavily. He was kept at her side, just how she liked it, before giving him a promotion to handle her affairs. When Leopold was a young adult, he became Queen Victoria's personal secretary, an unofficial position that his father Prince Albert had mostly held before his untimely passing. In some ways, Leopold's meticulous mind was ideal for this position, though it also pushed him to be concerned with court interests, something he was much less interested in. Leopold was a smart man. His time at Oxford was some of the best years of his life, where he made lifelong friends. He clinked glasses with celebrities like Oscar Wilde, John Ruskin, and Lewis Carroll. While these were socially acceptable activities for a royal prince, he was also embroiled in a secret society that his brother introduced him to. The future King of England, Edward, who was notorious for his debauched behaviour and scandals. He was introduced into the notorious secret society, the Freemasons. Leopold was no lonely rank and file either. After all, Albert Edward was a worshipful master and the most senior member of the Oxford location. Following the advice of his doctors, Leopold left his pregnant wife behind to travel to, in February of 1884, in the hope to reduce his haemophilic symptoms. He was staying at the lovely Villa Nevada residence. He had been there for a month when disaster struck. While in his villa on March the 27th, he slipped and fell. This should have been a minor ordeal, but due to the prince's blood-clotting disease, when he hit his knee and banged his head, it was catastrophic. The prince had been reminded of the dangers of hurting himself, and how the tiniest of bruises and bang-ups could lead him severely injured or worse, and for good reason. This fall was devastating to the royal. His condition worsened over the coming hours, until in the early morning of March 28th, the prince never woke up. The culprit behind his untimely end was gruesome. He had done well to avoid this level of injury throughout his life, but his luck had finally run out. This small bang to his head had led to a fatal cerebral hemorrhage, which led to his death. In his tragic wake, he left destruction when his mother mourned him deeply. When Victoria heard of Leopold's passing, her response was absolutely heartbreaking. She had already suffered the loss of her dear Albert, as well as Leopold's older sister Alice, and she was beside herself with grief and loneliness, as she wrote in her journal. To lose another dear child far from me, and one who was so gifted and such a help to me, is too dreadful. Then his wife was left alone, still pregnant at home and full of grief. She gave birth to the son he would never meet in that summer, Charles Edward, who would never know his father. His deadly disease was luckily not passed to his son, but that didn't mean that his family was safe. Leopold truly may have been cursed, and the curse did not end with his death. In the years after his death, his children and his wife suffered heart-wrenching fates. His first daughter Alice passed her haemophilia genes on to her eldest son Rupert, who then went on to die at the young age of 20 in a car accident, an event that his illness surely made worse. Yet Leopold's own son did more damage to his name when he lost his way. Growing up without a father figure is difficult, and little Charles Edward needed some guidance in his life. The man was not plagued by his father's royal disease, but he was plagued with the extremist ideologies when his son turned into a Nazi sympathizer, fighting on the German side in both World War I and World War II, before the English government stripped him of his titles for his participation. He became estranged in 1954. Charles Edward passed away while living in poverty. Leopold was the first known male royal in the British line to suffer from haemophilia, but he wasn't the last. The tragic tale of his legacy is infamous. One of Victoria's granddaughters was Princess Alix of Hesse, who was also a carrier of haemophilia, and she became Alexandra, the last Tsarina of Russia. Alexandra ended up passing on her haemophilia to her firstborn son, Alexei. Alexei's haemophilia was severe, and his mother grew desperate, even seeking the controversial help of the dark holy man Rasputin to save Queen Victoria's great-grandson. This, as we know now, was one of the matches that lit the Russian Revolution and eventually toppled the Russian royal family. Please continue to support my channel by subscribing. Please comment, like and subscribe if you wish for more stories, and leave your suggestions below and I will endeavour to cover them.